And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarists podcast, where we are talking about 100 guitarists that we think you should know. Today, who are we talking about, Jason?
We're talking about Vernon Reid, one of the most adventurous rock guitar players of the 80s, I would say.
That's right. I couldn't agree more.
So if you want to be a possible guest on the show, you can do that by emailing us at 100guitarists@premierguitar.com, or you can call us at 319-423-9734.
We got some nice texts about Vernon today. Nothing that we're going to read. This was an interesting group of texts. It was just a handful of people from around the world.
High approval rating. Vernon has a very high approval rating.
Speaks to our global reach, of course, also.
I mean...
but probably speaks more to Vernon Reid's high approval rating, as you said. A lot of votes, just like, hey, make sure you talk about Time's Up. Hey, make sure you talk about Vivid. Hey, make sure you talk about his time with Ronald Shannon Jackson. So we're going to get to all of it. We appreciate everybody who wrote in, and, keep it coming. Leave us voicemails, though. We love those. We can play those.
Yes.
Before we get going on Vernon, we're going to talk about today's sponsor, which is Reverend Guitars. All Reverend Guitars are designed by Reverend founder Joe Naylor, often starting with a blank canvas. Naylor works with every signature artist to design the exact guitar they crave for their particular sound and needs, including the pickups and all the electronics, hardware, functionality, shape and feel of the body, and neck and finish options. The guitars the signature artists perform with on stage are the same guitars that are available to fans and are all set up in the Reverend facility to the specs the artist request.
Yes, and right over here, I have a Billy Corgan signature model that we're going to be reviewing in the pages of Premier Guitar shortly. So
yeah,
I would say
I've always enjoyed Reverend Guitars when I've played them.
Yeah, they feel really good. I always like the neck shape. My favorite one is probably the Greg Koch Gristlemaster, I believe is the official name.
That's a cool one. They have a cool baritone too that I really like.
They have a cool baritone, and I mean people like Reeves Gabrels as a signature model, like we said, Billy Corgan, and we also think there's might be a more than 50-50 shot that Vernon might have a signature model in the not too distant future coming out. So we're going to talk about that when we get to the gear stuff. But let's dig in. So thank you again, Reverend Guitars, for the support. But let's dig into now Vernon Reid. So when did you first become aware? Because we were both a little too young to be hit with like the mainstream when they were, cult of personality, peak of their fame, so to speak. We probably didn't miss. Well, I know we both missed that. We were just a little too young. But when did you first become aware of Vernon Reid?
So I became aware of Vernon Reid because of his association, because of the band's association with the Rolling Stones. At some point, I was a young Stones enthusiast, and somewhere in there I learned that Living Colour had opened on the Steel Wheels tour, and that sort of, which is, we'll talk a little bit more about Vernon Reid and the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger in particular, but that was, hearing that they opened for the Steel Wheels tour was probably the first reason I checked out Cult of Personality, and of course just like classic rock radio obsessive that I was, Cult of Personality was on a lot.
Yeah, for me, it was, I think a lot of guitar players fell into this category, is that I started reading guitar magazines before I started playing guitar because I wanted to be ready. I wanted to be ready when the guitar showed up, that I could do something or know something. And Vernon's name was among a bunch of, Robin Ford was another name that I just recognized the name, didn't know much about him. I'd probably, through classic rock radio, heard it, but didn't really dig into Vernon's stuff past the cursory mainstream rock stuff until at least probably college.
Yeah.
And then come to find out everything he's done outside of Living Colour is a lot. He's played with so many people and in so many different configurations and variations that he's a one of one for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. So just to go back a little bit, I learned a fun fact about Vernon Reid. I didn't know that he was not. I associate Vernon with New York. He was born in the UK, but came up through the New York scene, the avant-garde jazz scene. He studied with guitarist Ted Dunbar. Is that right, Jason?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And his first, I guess, big way of like, getting known, of establishing himself within a scene was in the avant-garde jazz scene, playing with Ronald Shannon Jackson and the Decoding Society. Ronald Shannon Jackson is a drummer who's played with Ornette Coleman, Albert Ayler, a lot of other people. Vernon's on a few of his records, early 80s stuff. The album Barbecue Dog from 1983, that's a highlight for me. I remember, I knew Vernon from like more modern collaborations, like stuff with TJ Logic, stuff like that, in addition to the Living Colours records. And then somebody hipped me to the Ronald Shannon Jackson stuff, and it's a different side of his playing. It sounds a lot like the Ornette Coleman band at times, but with like, I don't know, like the next step beyond that, like building on that foundation. So I love that stuff. There's also the album Decode Yourself from 1985. The final track on there is a song called Tricky Vic, and that song totally rips. Vernon takes like a really, really awesome, just like avant shred solo that I had forgotten about, and coming back to it while listening to Vernon tracks for this episode, I was like, oh man, I forgot. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anybody to check that out. But a cool record that
this is the one I'm excited about that I didn't really know about until you brought it up to me.
So, and I think the thing is, I've known about this record for a while, but the album Smash and Scatteration from 1985 is a duo of Vernon Reid and our recent artist we covered, Bill Frisell. I've heard about this album a lot. I think I may have heard it like years ago in the MP3 blog era, and so it's like, which means it's probably on some like old ancient hard drive of mine. But I hadn't thought about this in a long time, and don't really know the record, and I found it. It's out of print. It came out on Gramavision, I believe. And I went back and listened to it, and it is a cool record.
So hear me out.
Yeah. What do you got?
Next year,
we're going to
40th anniversary. Right? 40th, right? Yeah. 40th anniversary. Bill and Vernon. They go on tour and they reissue this record. They're going to need one semi-truck for all the effects. I mean, there are a ton
There's
of effects.
A lot
and
because
Bill has gone through, as we talked about in his episode, phases of lots of effects, nothing, and Vernon has been steady.
Yes.
He has, if you've seen, we've probably, 2 rig rundowns, I think, with him. Either one, there are a multitude of pedals. Probably
more than
top
anybody?
3 or 4. It has to be top 3 or 4. Like, I'm thinking War on Drugs has a lot. Klinghoffer had a lot. But Vernon is right up there with just the amount of pedals he will bring to a gig.
And it's not just that he consistently has a lot, it's that he's consistently on the cutting edge, so to speak.
Yep. If he's
so it's like in 1985, he's using guitar synths, and whatever. I wish we could go back in time and do a rig rundown on that. What are the sounds on that record are synths, guitar synths, and pedals. Because he's credited, they're both credited as playing electric guitar, guitar synth, band. Vernon has a banjo credit on there. Bill doesn't. And then synthesizer and electronic drums. There's some cool drum machine stuff on here, which is very up my alley.
So we might need to do another 2 hours on this record down the road as bonus. Like, that would be great. Like, if we get Bill and Vernon together and let's just talk about that record for like an hour.
People want to hear that, right?
Let's put that on the list.
Get the energy going. 40th anniversary. Smash and Scatteration. Great album title. Also, like, for real, that is a great album title.
That's great.
And it
all right,
describes what it sounds like.
So right around this time, he's also starting Living Colour, which he's probably most well known for, of course.
Yeah.
But another thing he started was the Black Rock Coalition with writer Greg Tate and artist rep Conda Mason.
Yeah. You can read about the Black Rock Coalition on their website. They have a page of their site that has their manifesto. Basically, It was a group of artists that got together with the purpose of creating an atmosphere conducive to the maximum developed exposure and acceptance of Black alternative music, that's just stuff I'm reading right from their manifesto. Check it out. We'll put the link in the show notes. But that essentially was sort of like where Living Color came from. Living Color had formed before they put Black Rock Coalition together. But at that time, that was really just a name. My understanding is it was just a name that Vernon was using for different groups of people trying to get his own band going. And there were a lot of different people playing different kinds of music under the name Living Color. But it wasn't until 1986 that the band stabilized as the group that like we know from as Living Color, which was Vernon, Muzz Skillings on bass, Will Calhoun on drums, and Corey Glover on vocals. Skillings had met Vernon at a Black Rock Coalition meeting, and Calhoun was playing in the Black Rock Coalition Orchestra. Little fun fact, do you know what Corey Glover was known for before Living Color?
Is it music related?
Not quite. He was an actor. Yeah, Corey Glover was an actor, but not known for musicals. Famously, I think probably his most famous part is that he was in the movie Platoon. You ever see Platoon?
Oh yeah, I had no.
Yeah, now you could go back and look for Corey in there.
Yeah, and so that lineup pretty much has stuck since then.
Except Doug Wimbish.
Oh, except right.
Skillings. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think on the third album.
Right. And I've just seen the band. They're touring with Extreme. Maybe they're still touring with them, but I just saw them last September, and incredible show. To me, like Will Calhoun and Corey Glover were like, Vernon was great. I mean, everybody was great, but like Corey's voice is still there. You know,
man, I know, right?
When he came out and hit this big note to kick off the show, like it was like, whoa, it was incredible.
And it's like, it's high energy, high velocity, and like, it takes a lot to perform like that. I could see why you'd say musicals too, because it's like, he has such range.
Yeah. And Will was playing a bright yellow drum kit. It was great.
Yes.
It was totally great. And Doug Wimbish is no stranger to pedals either.
Wimbish is no stranger to
avid pedal user. We've done so many NAMM demos with Doug over the years.
Oh, really?
Different things. Oh, yeah. He has popped up almost every year somewhere. So yeah, we've worked with him quite a bit.
I don't know that because this was my first NAMM, and I didn't get to do a video with Doug Wimbish, but now I have something to look forward to for
it's
the
like
next NAMM.
The rite of passage is doing a video with Doug Wimbish and seeing Stevie Wonder.
I know you promised me Stevie Wonder this year, and I did not see
almost
Stevie
have to
Wonder.
go
And
out
then I
of your
saw him on
way.
Instagram. I
Yeah,
think you sent it to me on Instagram.
You have to like go out of your way almost to not see Stevie. But I will say, now that they've organized where the booths are at NAMM, we're not as intermingled with all the keyboard stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you probably have to wander off out of the guitar stuff into the keyboard stuff to run into Stevie. But he's there just about every year.
Next year, I'm looking for Stevie, and I'm looking for Doug. I want to make a video
That's right.
with Doug. So, getting back to Living Color, Living Color have an interesting trajectory. The origins of Living Color are pretty interesting to me because it's like they're coming out of this like downtown New York avant-garde scene, and then Vernon's putting together a rock band, and they're playing at CBGB's. I guess like ostensibly they're a punk rock band. That's like the scene. They're in the downtown rock scene, and the downtown experimental music scene. And Vernon ends up playing on Mick Jagger's Primitive Cool album. There's a lot of great guitarists on that album. And Mick Jagger ends up producing the 1987 demos of Glamour Boys and Which Way to America. And that's what eventually led them to getting their major label deal with Epic Records.
That's a good fun. So he was basically like how Gene Simmons was to Van Halen, according to Gene. Mick Jagger.
Yeah, right.
Mick Jagger was to Living Color. Yeah.
Yeah, and those performances are what appear on the album Vivid, though remixed. But that's, we can hear those demos were so good that they ended up on the album. But so they get signed, and then Vivid is their debut. And it's the breakthrough record at a time when black music did not mean heavy rock music.
Right.
And that was like a strong categorization. And that was like a really big product of the Black Rock Coalition. And really everything they were doing and standing for. So obviously the breakout hit from that record is Cult of Personality.
Yeah.
Let's talk
one
about
of the one of the best riffs of the 80s. I mean,
it really is.
Because it's not just like I want to say like a caveman level, just loud rock riff. Like there's some real intricacies in it. Has a little bit of an odd time feel in one of the measures when it comes around. And the other thing I think that kind of classifies a really nice creative riff is that there's some disagreement as to how it's necessarily played. I've seen some people play it with open strings. I believe, and Vernon can correct me, I believe he plays it without any open strings.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a slightly different fingering. But I remember when we did a clinic together years ago, maybe 15 years ago now, that was one of the questions. Like, so we all know the notes you're playing, right? But like, how are you playing it? And so he did a nice, like, slow little breakdown of how to play that. And, it was a room full of mostly kids. And they're like, oh, okay. And his solo on there is like so ferocious. It's the type of playing that it's not the type of solo that I would like sit down and learn note for note.
No.
But boy, would I want to just like play along with it to try and cop some of that energy. Yeah.
It's all energy, right? It's like Vernon got struck by lightning.
And his picking technique is unusual. He picks a lot, I guess, was it from his wrist or his arm? Especially when and I feel like he turns his wrist a little bit, almost Benson-like in a way.
It's almost Benson-y.
When he really, like, it's almost like he's picking, and the faster he gets, the more his wrist turns.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm guessing is. I've never talked to him about it, but that'd be one thing I would ask him is where did that kind of come from when he was, growing up? Because it's very unique him. I think of his picking technique the same way I think of like Marty Friedman. Like, for all intensive purposes, it's wrong. It's not a traditional.
Not ergonomic.
It's not ergonomic. It doesn't look comfortable, to be honest. I'm glad it works for him, but it doesn't look smooth and comfortable, Whereas, honestly, if you look at like Yngwie's picking, it's super smooth.
Yeah.
You don't see the effort, I guess you could say. Whereas with him, I see the the energy and the effort behind it, which is good. It definitely gives him his own sound and stuff. But
it's something that kind of appeals to me about a lot of guitar players is like I strive to be ergonomic and clean about my picking and my own technique because I don't want to hurt myself and work too hard. But like ultimately when I'm playing, like I'm sort of, that stuff goes out of the window and we see if it sticks. And players who have like really odd esoteric techniques and, are working for it, like you hear it in their sound. And I find that a lot of guitar players that I like have that in there. And I think with Vernon, that's definitely like a trait that I like. And so going back to the Cult of Personality solo, it's like, I feel like you do hear that because it's like, he just takes off. Well, actually go back to the beginning. That song starts and the whole song takes off, right? It like when that comes on classic rock radio, I don't know what they're playing on Iowa classic rock radio, but over here in the Philadelphia area, it's just like, I mean, I listen to it, but it's Foreigner and Journey. And like that's what I'm getting. I'm getting corporate rock all of the time. That's the period that we're stuck in with classic rock radio of the moment. I mean, it's been that way since I was a kid, but it's like only that I don't hear the Stones much, for example, on classic rock radio anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's all that corporate rock stuff, and then Cult of Personality will come on, and it sounds like punk rock when it comes on. It's just like it's so nasty and it's so aggressive. I'm like, how can this song 36 years later sound so confrontational? But then when he plays that solo, it is even more confrontational because he's not playing like you said. It's like It's not something you would learn note for note because it's not melodic. It is an energy solo. And I think that it like totally shows his roots in avant-garde jazz. It's like it's energy music, it's fire music. He's just like he's breathing fire in that solo. And God, I love it. It's like I heard that song well before I had ever heard, noise guitar music or anything like that. But it's like I think it's something that like has kept me coming back to Living Color and to Vivid and to Cult of Personality. Is just like it's all in there. So much depth to that song.
Yeah, incredible. So they had kind of their first period, which went up until about 93, which also includes Time's Up, the EP of covers, where he does Hendrix. Mostly covers.
They're cool
Talking Heads.
covers.
Yeah, they are. And a couple original tunes. And then the Stain album in 93 was kind of the last one before they took a break. And they took a break from, 95 to about 2000.
Yeah.
And then they came back now with a series of, since then, they reformed in 2000, and they've put out 3 records since then, which I believe, from all reports, they're also working on music for a new forthcoming record.
I saw that too.
But let's talk about kind of their, so have you seen Living Color live?
I've seen them twice.
Okay, tell me about it.
Man. So in college, one of my professors, I remember jazz theory class, brought in a transcription, or maybe he didn't bring in a transcription. Maybe he just like played us some Living Color and was like, this is the best stuff. And, as a rock dude who was trying to like learn some jazz stuff, that was really deep to me. Years later, he and his name's Dan Monahan, my professor from that class, we ended up playing in a band together. And he was like, you have to see Living Color live. And twice we've gone to see them. We've gone up to New York and saw them at Brooklyn Bowl, saw them at Ardmore Music Hall here in the Philadelphia area. And both times, I mean, just consistently great.
Yeah.
Both of those shows were a couple years apart. And just like everything I just said, all was true. Like they get on stage and they played, I think they played after Fishbone, who was a super energetic band. I think one show was like one way, one show was the other, if I remember correctly. And it's like, they get up there and like just explode as soon as they hit. And it's like, it's all killer, no filler. Vernon sounds amazing. His guitar playing is just like incredible. And he had, a couple different guitars, a million pedals. And it's like all the sounds are there. And like Corey Glover, of course, is just like incredible also. And seeing Living Color live definitely like is a good, if you've never seen them live and you need like some hard hitting rock inspiration, I think like go see Living Color live. And it's like it's the energy that like anybody would need to just like want to go rock. Like you leave that and you're like, I want to start a band. I want to do all the things.
Right. That's the same feeling I had when I saw them. So I saw him just this past fall. I did a clinic with Vernon, and then I saw him with the Yohimbi Brothers, which was very cool. Completely different vibe.
Oh yeah, that's him and DJ Logic, right?
Yeah. And I really wish, it's kind of a good transition to our next section here, where we talk about his non-Living Color stuff. I really wish I would have seen the Spectrum Road stuff, the Tony Williams Lifetime tribute. But before we get to that, we want to have my old friend Amanda Monaco. She called in. I knew when we were talking about Vernon, she knows Vernon's worked with Vernon, known him from kind of the New York jazz scene and stuff. So she's a professor at Berkeley, incredible guitar player. She's written a bunch of cool jazz guitar books, also studied with Ted Dunbar. And so we're going to go to her now and hear what she has to say about Vernon Reid.
Hi, this is Amanda Monaco, and my Vernon Reid story is that I met him in the grocery store in 1999. There was this big grocery store in Harlem where I lived, and he was, I believe one of us was buying fish. And I asked him if he was Vernon Reid, and he thought I was just some weird fan. But then I shared with him that we had the same guitar teacher who was the great Ted Dunbar, and we immediately connected. And all I can say is that he's just the nicest guy. And it's kind of funny because Cult of Personality is my favorite guitar riff of all time. I've never seen him play with Living Color. I've seen him play in all these other projects that are super cool. Like he wrote music for silent films, and he did this project at Lincoln Center, and I saw him sit in at Iridium in New York, and every time I see him play, he just melts everyone's faces in the audience, and he's just brilliant. And that's all I have to say. Vernon's great.
All right, so that was Amanda Monaco. Thank you, Amanda, for calling in. So now, Nick, let's put Living Color aside for a second and talk about a bunch of his other bands. I mentioned the Ohimbi Brothers, Spectrum Road, which is the Tony Williams Lifetime tribute with Medeski, Jack Bruce, and Cindy Blackman Santana. The Freeform Funky Freaks.
With Jamaluddin Takuma and Calvin Weston.
Yeah. Yep. We've done features on both of those bands, the Freeform Funky Freaks and Spectrum Road.
I'm a big fan
but
of
there
both.
was one you sent me. You just sent me a link.
Yep.
And you're like, just listen to this before we record today. So
yeah, what'd you think? So I sent Jason the song from the album People's Choice Music by the composer Dave Soldier and the artist Komar and Melamed. The song is called The Most Wanted Song. Do you know anything about this track?
Nothing.
What'd you think of it? Honest.
I
Totally
mean,
honest.
When I got to, I thought it was pretty square until I got to the solo.
Okay.
You know,
Did
but
anything seem weird or off about it?
What am I? Are you leading me? I don't know where you're leading me.
No.
Like,
There's nothing. I mean, it's not like an AI song or anything.
No. But I wouldn't have said, "Is that Vernon Reid?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Vernon did not cross my mind when I heard the solo.
No, and he wouldn't. This is a song. I just think this is a fun little curiosity that I love to tell people about, and now I get to tell more people about all at once here on the 100 Guitars podcast, which is so this album, People's Choice Music, it was created. I mean, this is years ago that it was made. It was created by survey, and so Dave Soldier and Komar Melamed took listener surveys from people and asked them, like, what do you like in music? What don't you like in music? What instruments do you like the most? What lyrical topics do you like the most? What kind of melodies do you like the most? You know, all this stuff. And so out of the results, Dave composed the most wanted song with all the positive results and the things that people like about music, and the most unwanted song that people hate about music. I didn't send you the most unwanted song because it's about 30 minutes long. People hate that.
People hate really long songs.
I totally recommend that you also listen to that. There's a lot of children singing holiday songs while an opera singer raps over a cowboy beat. These are all not exaggerated things that actually happen in that song.
Sounds like
and
a
then
toe
the most
tapper.
wanted song is basically like a generic pop love song. There are intelligent lyrics in there because that was the thing that people like. And then there are like non-intelligent lyrics, which are also the thing that people like. And then Vernon Reid plays, you know, what is supposed to be, I guess you could call like a middle of the road guitar solo.
This is like almost like analog AI.
It is analog
You know.
AI. Yeah, it is just a really fascinating curiosity to me. I don't think it really indicates much about Vernon Reid's own music, but I think it's cool that it's him playing it, and he can really do it all. He could play the most wanted music if he wants to.
That's incredible. Yeah. All right, so let's move on here and let's talk about gear. And man, I hate to say this, but does he have too much gear? I mean, like you say, have you seen the rig rundowns?
Yeah, there's too
a
much gear
lot.
for us to talk about.
Yeah, too much gear for us to talk about. So he's had a signature PRS guitar. He has the famous guitar from the Living Color days, Hamer, right? ESP. And he has a forthcoming signature Reverend guitar, which he teased on his Instagram. We'll put a picture up of that.
Yeah, that is an unofficial word there, but he seems...
Oh, it's from him. It's from Vernon. It's as
But it's
official as
from
it
him,
gets.
yeah.
It's from Vernon.
I mean, it's like you're not going to find it on the Reverend site, but he is
Not
posted.
yet, but maybe by the time this comes out, they'll want to get in ahead of the rub that this podcast has, the careers this podcast has made people.
Something
But
cool that I also wanted to put out there is a few years ago, we did a series of videos for Premier Guitar called Why I Built This. And I did one with a guy named Michael King. He's a luthier who runs the company Cowbrand Design. And at the time, he had just built a guitar called the Mars Guppy for Vernon. And that guitar is really cool looking. Had you seen his guitars before?
no,
They're
Not before
kind of
you-
like, they have this sort of like Art Deco meets 50s futurism, like mid-century modern, like Jetsons kind of looks. And the one he built for Vernon, it has like this MIDI pickup, and then the actual pickups are Michael's design that I think are I just think are cool looking pickups. Definitely worth checking out if we'll put that in the show notes. And if you're watching here on YouTube, you'll see the picture now. But it's a really cool looking guitar. So I've never seen him play it with Living Color or anything.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, and just going back to those rig rundowns, he's like a very responsible MIDI user. Like,
Yeah.
he uses MIDI for good.
and as we
MIDI
learned
for
from
good.
Smash and Scatteration, he knows how to use MIDI.
He
He's
knows
been
how to
doing
use
it for a
MIDI.
long time.
Exactly. So he, with great power becomes great responsibility in having to harness, that amount of pedals for a gig like Living Color, which for me, if I was it, I would just be like, here's my guitar, here's my overdrive, there's my amp, maybe have a couple modulation things on it. But and he's always, like we've said several times, he's always on the cutting edge. Like, if there's a new thing that's out, he's going to give it a try. And he keeps pushing himself from a gear perspective to find new sounds. And a lot of that comes through. I don't hear it as much in his Living Color stuff, but I definitely hear it on his other outside bands.
Yeah.
Like,
I
there's
agree.
just more room for those kind of weird tones,
Living Color is the rock band with rock sounds.
Yes.
And outside of that, he does a lot of experimenting for sure.
But, the rig rundowns have been with Living Color, and he's had a pile of pedals. So he's figuring out how to do it. So good for him. All right. So where do you hear Vernon's influence nowadays, Nick? Where do you hear his influence pop up?
That's a good question. Vernon's influence lives really strongly in experimental music. I mean, I think that there are a lot of guitar players who use a lot of pedals now, and it's like he is one of like the OG dudes who was doing that, like you said. And so it's like, I think that it's there for sure. How about you?
I think he's the guy that brings the jazzers over to the rock world, and he brings rockers over to the avant-garde jazz world. If you only know him from Living Color, you might see him, like, seeing him pop up with this Tony Williams thing or the Freeform Funky Freaks or whatever. Like, you might have a bit more of an appetite for that style of music going either way than you would if it wasn't for Vernon. So that to me is his, I don't say influence, but like one of his big contributions is that he's bringing these two, mainstream rock and avant-garde jazz. He's bringing those two together a bit more, maybe more so than anybody I can really think of, because we both know a lot of rock guitar players and a lot of like jazzers like that, but rarely has any of the jazzers had like mainstream top of the chart rock appeal.
There's very
cred.
few. I mean, like, especially it's like we talked about Benson. That's such an extreme, but that's such a different thing. There, it's like Nels Cline maybe is like a close version of this, but that's like, right? Who else?
But Wilco is not like number
it's not
one
the same.
album
That's
on
not number
Billboard
one.
or whatever. You know what I mean?
Every one of that first run of Living Color albums were charting albums.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I would say go check out all you can find about Vernon Reid, and you will be rewarded.
That's right.
So,
all right, well,
we
give
did
us
it.
a call. Let us
Yes.
know if we is there a Vernon album that we missed that we should have talked about that you love, or a Vernon album that nobody else knows about that you think we should know about. Give us a holler. Let us know what you think. Keep watching our social media. Keep an eye on our post to see when we're recording again and who we'll be covering next, and make sure you call in. You can get at us at 100 Guitarists at premierguitar.com. That's 100 Guitarists at premierguitar.com. And the phone number where you can text or leave us a voicemail is 319-423-9734. Keep watching on our YouTube channel, and you can find us if you're watching this. You want to find the audio podcast. You can find us wherever you find your podcasts.
There you go. Special thanks to Reverend Guitars for sponsoring the episode, and we'll see y'all next week.